We've all been there, and sometimes it can feel horrible when you know that you've messed up at work and you know that it's your fault. But it's not the mistakes that count, it's what you do afterwards. But the real trick is to use it to your advantage, and this video is going to show you how. We all make mistakes. It doesn't matter the fact that we've messed up at work. What counts is what happens afterwards. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I handle mistakes and how I've used them to my advantage. The fact is that people have more respect for you if you own up to a mistake than if you just try and deny it and hide it. Those people that actually own up to a mistake and say, yeah, do you know what, that was my fault, they're the ones that are going to get the respect at work. So owning up to it and admitting that you're the one at fault is really powerful. It's especially powerful if you're actually defending someone on your team. So when I make a mistake, what I do is I say quite publicly, that was my mistake. Now, I feel comfortable enough in my skin at work to be able to admit that I've made a mistake. And also when I make a mistake, it allows other people to admit that they can make mistakes as well, because I'm very senior. So one of the things that I always encourage everyone to do is first of all, own up to the mistakes. You take ownership by saying, that was my fault and this is what I'm going to do about it. So you need to give people confidence and you need to give people encouragement that not only do you know that you're the one that's made a mistake and you're not trying to hide from it, but you know what to do afterwards, especially when it's someone on your team. Now, when someone's on your team and they make a mistake, it's kind of reflective of you. So you kind of need to own that as well. So I always, if I've got a team or several teams that I'm managing at the time, I'll always turn around and say, do you know what, that was my fault. I know that that person messed up, but they were under my direction. This is what I'm supposed to be responsible for. I should have made sure that they're okay. So I always make sure that I own their mistakes as well as mine. So the first key point when you are dealing with when you mess up at work is to own the mistakes. The fact is that managers and senior people want confidence, and they know that everybody makes mistakes at work. What they're looking for is, can you handle admitting that you make a mistake, and can you handle owning up to it and then dealing with it afterwards? If you can turn around to a manager and say, yeah, that was my mistake, and guess what, this is what I'm going to do about it, then they're going to have more confidence in you as if you never made a mistake in the first place, because deep down they know that there's no such thing as an employee that makes mistakes. There's only employees that admit them and hide them. If you own that mistake, then they're going to have a lot more confidence in you than anybody else that doesn't admit they make mistakes. Sometimes you just need to know when to leave something alone. When you make a mistake, it can be something that you're really tempted to kind of deal with it there and then, especially if there's like an email chain that's going around or some sort of messaging app and you feel obliged to defend yourself. Sometimes you've just got to know when to leave things alone. Do you think that anybody that is looking back at you in 2 months' time and knowing that you made a small mistake or even a big mistake, do you think that they're going to be caring about that? Trust me, they've got their own problems and they're not even going to remember. The worst thing that you can do is generate more work and more things trying to be seen like you're doing something when it's not really based on anything. If you own your mistake, that's great. But if you try and start putting loads of different processes in and almost trying to palm off that it was the processes or something else externally, it was the reason why you made a mistake, you might be generating more work and more overheads for people. So sometimes it's just better to leave it alone. Another thing is that, sometimes people feel compelled to justify why they made the mistake. And this still comes under the leaving it alone phase. If you're reading loads of emails and there's a lot of dissection on what went wrong and you feel like you need to jump in and justify everything, all you're doing at that point is drawing attention to the fact that you made the mistake. The other thing that I see people do, and I've made this mistake in the past, almost highlight that other people have also made mistakes. But again, people are only going to see that you made the mistake, but all you're doing is just drawing more attention to yourself, and worse, you're painting a picture that you can't handle when you made a mistake. Know when to leave things alone, a really powerful lesson, and it's something that I employ all the time. Damage control effectiveness has a half-life. The more you leave a mistake and you don't get on top of it, the worse it's going to become, and it compounds into two areas. First of all, if you've made a mistake, then that mistake's been made, but that means that there's a problem somewhere. If you just leave it and you hide from it, then whatever that problem is going to manifest itself in different ways. It may grow bigger, it may cause other problems. You not getting on top of it is going to be almost compounding the problem. The other thing it's going to do is it's going to make you look really, really bad if you don't get on top of it straight away. So if you leave a problem and you just allow it to fester and you don't get on top of it, then no one's going to trust you in the future. The key here is to use these things to your advantage. So if you make a mistake and you get on top of it straight away, then everyone's going to have a lot more respect for you, especially senior managers and your manager. You're dealing with it and you're sorting it out. I say something like this: I've made a mistake and I've recognized it, and it's a mistake that shouldn't have happened, but this is what I've been doing about it. So not only have I made the mistake, that I'm also putting into action these things to mitigate it. So just leave it with me, I'll deal with it, but I just thought you needed to know. Now, if you say that to your manager or someone that's above you, they are going to have all the confidence in the world and they're going to trust you to leave you alone. I've gained more respect from that type of attitude in my career, where I've admit mistakes and come forward and said this is how I'm mitigating it, than almost anything else in my career. Now, whether you do this next part by yourself or in a group, and there's going to be times where you need to do one or the other, you need to make sure that you understand what caused that problem in the first place. Your goal here is to make sure that management and senior management know that when you make a mistake, or your team makes a mistake, or a project that you're running, something goes wrong, they need to know that you can handle future mistakes. So this is what you do. If you're on your own and you're reflecting, you need to sit down and go through everything that led up to that mistake. You can draw flow charts, you can put diagrams down, but essentially you need to investigate why you made that mistake. Now, that investigation could be just thinking about it for 5 minutes. You don't need to overdo it every time. But if it's a big mistake within an environment with lots of moving parts, then you need to kind of put all the things together to find out why you made that mistake. It could have been that you didn't have the right information. It could be that you assumed something, but you need to know. Same thing is if you're doing it in a group. If there's a mistake that's been made and you feel like it's a collective thing, like it's a project, you need to do a retrospective. You need to get everybody in a room and you need to go through why you think that mistake happened. Now, the most important thing when you're doing this in a group and it's a retrospective is you need to let everybody else be honest. You cannot gerrymander the data in any way whatsoever. You need to give everybody their chance to say where they think it went wrong, even if it's going to feel uncomfortable when they're going to point the finger at you. And you need to ask them what they think could have been done differently, because that's the only way you're going to solve these things. Now, whether you investigate this on your own or you investigate this with a group, the key point that you need to do is to make sure that you give that report to someone. So you need to say to a senior manager or your manager or the CEO, whoever it is, we made this mistake, or I made this mistake, and this is what I looked into it. So I found out why I made that mistake, and this is what I found. Or this is what I need you to help me do something about it, because if we don't act on this based on this information, we could make the same mistake again in the future. Now, here's the real key point with this one. You need to use retrospectives, the results of the retrospectives in the future. Next time you run a project or next time you set something up, you refer back to that retrospective. Whether it was a week ago, 6 months ago, keep it in your arsenal and you bring it out when you need to. So there's been times in the past where I've been setting something up. I could be setting up a project, I could be setting up, like a new department or something like that. And a senior manager has come to me and said, what on earth are you doing? Why the hell are you doing it like that? And I've turned around and said, well, based on the retrospective of this, when we made this mistake in the past, this is what came out of it, and this is what we need to do to make sure that we don't make that mistake again in the future. It's really difficult to argue with that kind of evidence because you've got it there. You've done the investigation and you've got the data for it. So if you go through the retrospective, whether it's on your own or in a group, you must use that for something in the future. What you're really saying to that manager is, your business is safe with me. Guys, whatever happens, emotion's going to be involved and you are going to be embarrassed from time to time. It's happened to me. I've had nightmares about this from mistakes that I've made in the past. I've made mistakes on a Wednesday or a Tuesday and I've spent the entire weekend afterwards just thinking about that mistake I made. Embarrassment happens, guilt happens, feelings happen. But one thing I can tell you, and what I learned, and I say this to absolutely everyone, is that we do not learn from our successes. We only learn from our failures, and you need to remember that. SpaceX is not successful because it had perfect rocket launches every single time. It's successful because it built failure into its process. Every time they sent a rocket up and it exploded, they understood and they figured out why that happened so it wouldn't happen again. And you need to take the same attitude. So when mistakes happen, if you feel like you're getting guilty or you feel embarrassed, always make sure that you look in yourself and you think, actually, this is just a learning experience. The more embarrassment that you have, the more unlikely that you're going to make that mistake again. The more guilt that you have, the more likely is it that you'll learn from your mistake and make things even better in the future. This is even more prominent when someone comes to you with a mistake. So if you've got someone that's more junior to you or someone on your team, you should do what I do. And what I say to that person is, I have made all these mistakes in the past. Do you know what the difference is between me and you? It's experience. That is the only difference. I don't have any more ability than you. I don't have some sort of magical thing about me. I just have the experience to be able to put this into effect. Because I promise you, I've made more mistakes than you've had hot dinners. But you need to understand that we all make them, I've made them, and it's okay. It's okay to make the mistakes. I hope that helps. As per usual, if you're finding everything interesting or you're going to find it helpful, then please like and subscribe. Other than that, please put in the comments if there's anything you want me to go through. Have a great day, and I really hope this video helps.